Ever pondered on how a dynasty that ruled for over 3 centuries could be overthrown in a matter of days? This question takes us back to the fascinating and turbulent era of the Romanov dynasty. From the early 17th century, the Romanovs held sway over the vast expanse of Russia, shaping its destiny for a span of 300 years. They were the custodians of power and prosperity, with an iron grip that seemed unshakable. During their reign, Russia transformed from a medieval state into a global empire, a testament to the influence and impact of the Romanov family. They weren't just rulers, they were the embodiment of the state itself. Tsars like Peter the Great and Catherine the Great left indelible marks on Russian history, shaping its culture, society, and even its geographical borders. However, as we'll soon discover, even the mightiest of empires can crumble. Power and prosperity, it seems, are not immune to the sands of time. In the early 20th century, Russia was a bubbling pot of discontent. The nation, vast in its expanse and diverse in its populace, was veering towards an unavoidable cataclysm. A potent combination of socio-economic issues, the devastating impact of World War I, and a growing dissatisfaction among the masses was pushing the nation to the brink. The socio-economic landscape of Russia was in shambles. The larger part of the population was made up of peasants who were trapped in a cycle of poverty, burdened by heavy taxes and lack of land ownership. The urban workers, on the other hand, were facing the harsh realities of industrialization with low wages, long working hours, and appalling living conditions. The contrast between the haves and the have-nots was stark, and the gap ever widening. The onset of World War I added fuel to the fire. As Russia plunged into the war, the economy took a further hit. The cost of war was high, both in terms of human lives and resources. Food and fuel shortages became the norm, leading to widespread hunger and discontent. Amidst this chaos, Tsar Nicholas II, the man at the helm, seemed ill-equipped to handle the mounting crises. His autocratic rule, lack of political acumen, and perceived indifference towards the plight of his subjects only served to amplify the public's discontent. His decision to take personal command of the Russian military during the war was met with severe criticism, further eroding his credibility and authority. The discontent among the masses was not just a mere grumble, it was a loud outcry for change. The workers, the peasants, the soldiers, everyone was yearning for a better life, for a Russia that was not just for the privileged few, but for all. In this landscape of turmoil and discontent, the seeds of revolution were sown. The stage was set for a revolution. The people were ready for a change, and change, as history has shown us, was indeed on the horizon. February 1917, the month that would change the course of Russian history forever. As the winter chill swept through Russia, a spark of revolution ignited within its people. The February Revolution, named so by the Julian calendar then in use in Russia, was a mass protest that erupted into open revolt. The people of Russia, tired of hunger and war, took to the streets, their cries for bread echoing through the crisp winter air. Strikes and protests sprang up like wildfire across Petrograd, Russia's then capital. The city bristled with discontent, as the people demanded an end to the food shortages, the war, and the autocracy. The Tsar's troops were called in to quell the uprising, but they too had had enough. In an unprecedented turn of events, many soldiers chose to stand with the people, their brothers and sisters in suffering, instead of firing upon them. The revolution reached its climax when Tsar Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, was forced to abdicate. His reign, which had spanned more than 2 decades, crumbled under the weight of the people's will. His throne was left vacant, and in its place, the provisional government was formed. Comprised of members of the Duma, Russia's legislative body, the provisional government was intended to govern Russia until a new, democratic system could be established. Nicholas II was out, but the turmoil was far from over. In the midst of chaos, a radical political party saw an opportunity. This party was the Bolsheviks, a group that emerged during Russia's deepening political crisis, and they were led by none other than Vladimir Lenin. Lenin, a man of strong convictions and unwavering resolve, was the driving force behind the rise of the Bolsheviks. Lenin believed that the proletariat, the working class, were the key to revolution and change. He championed the ideas of Karl Marx, adapting them to the Russian context, and gave birth to a new political ideology known as Marxism-Leninism. This ideology called for a violent overthrow of the existing social order, the establishment of a dictatorship of the proletariat, and the eventual withering away of the state. But it wasn't just Lenin's charisma or his ideas that made the Bolsheviks popular. The Bolsheviks were able to tap into the discontent of the masses and offer them a vision of a better future, one without the exploitation of the working class. They promised peace, land, and bread, three things that were in short supply in war-torn Russia. As the Bolsheviks' message spread, so too did their popularity. Workers, soldiers, and peasants alike saw in the Bolsheviks a chance for change, for a break from the endless cycle of war and hardship. The Bolsheviks were not just another political party, they were a beacon of hope in a sea of despair. But the rise of the Bolsheviks wasn't without its challenges. They faced opposition from other socialist groups, from the provisional government, and from foreign powers who feared the spread of communism. Yet, through it all, the Bolsheviks remained steadfast, their resolve hardened by the belief that they were on the right side of history. As 1917 drew to a close, the Bolsheviks had transformed from a small radical party into a formidable political force. They had a clear vision, a dedicated leader, and an increasingly large following. The stage was set for the next chapter in Russia's turbulent history. The Bolsheviks were gaining momentum, and they had their sights set on power. October 1917, the month that would seal the fate of the Romanov dynasty. The October Revolution, also known as the Bolshevik Revolution, was a seismic event that shook the very foundations of Russia. It was an uprising not just against the provisional government but against centuries of autocratic rule. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power from the provisional government, promising the people peace, land, and bread. They capitalized on the widespread discontent that had been brewing among the Russian populace for years. The provisional government, which had done little to address the grievances of the people, was left defenseless against the well-orchestrated Bolshevik takeover. But the October Revolution was more than a political coup. It was the death knell for the Romanov dynasty, which had ruled Russia for over 3 centuries. The Romanovs, who had been living under house arrest since the February Revolution, were now in grave danger. In July 1918, in the middle of the night, the Romanov family, Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children were awoken and led into a basement under the pretense of safety. There, in a chilling end to the Romanov rule, the entire family, along with their loyal servants, were brutally executed. This event marked the end of an era and the complete eradication of the Romanov dynasty. The execution was carried out in secrecy. However, the news eventually leaked, sending shockwaves around the world. The Romanovs, who once lived in opulence and wielded immense power, met a tragic end, far removed from their former glory. The October Revolution thus marked 2 significant events in Russia's history: the rise of the Bolsheviks to power and the end of the Romanov dynasty. It was a turning point that would change the face of Russia forever. With the fall of the Romanov dynasty, a new era began in Russia. The Russian Revolution marked the end of an era and the beginning of another. The fall of the Romanovs and the rise of the Bolsheviks led to the formation of a new political entity that would shape the course of history: the Soviet Union. The initial years following the revolution were marked by a brutal civil war. On one side were the Reds, the Bolsheviks and their allies, fighting to establish a socialist state. On the other side were the Whites, a coalition of monarchists, capitalists, and those loyal to the old regime, striving to restore the status quo. The conflict was fierce, the casualties high, but ultimately, the Reds prevailed. The establishment of the Soviet Union brought about significant changes. It was a time of radical transformation, as the country moved from a largely agrarian society to an industrialized superpower. Land was redistributed, industries were nationalized, and education and healthcare became accessible to the masses. However, the revolution's long-term effects were not all positive. The transition to a socialist state came with a heavy human cost. Repression, famine, and political purges became a harsh reality, casting a long shadow over the achievements of the revolution. The Russian Revolution, a testament to the power of the masses, forever changed the course of history. It serves as a stark reminder of the profound impact that societal upheaval can have not only on a nation but on the world at large.